afternoon. I am Judge Deborah Thomas. I am so glad that you have tuned in today. I'm going to give you some great information. I have a wonderful guest. My guest today is Attorney Dwayne Johnson. How you doing?
I'm great, Judge.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm glad you just stopped by. You looking all dapper today.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I want to start off by basically just letting folks know, who is Attorney Dwayne Johnson? Where'd you grow up? What you doing?
Well, I am a native Detroiter.
All right.
Born and raised in this great city. I attended Patton Gill Elementary School, started there. Then I went to Fitzgerald, and from Fitzgerald, then Post Junior High.
Okay.
And then I went to Cass Technical High School.
So did I.
Yeah, all right.
So did I.
Cass Tech in the house.
Yeah.
Then I went to Michigan State University for 4 years and got married, had a couple of children, and then came to the conclusion that it was time for me to go to law school.
Wow.
And so I applied to Detroit College of Law. Didn't have much money, didn't know how I was going to pay for it, but God blessed me with a full scholarship.
Really?
Full scholarship.
Oh, that means you was one of those smart students.
No, just blessed.
Okay.
The Lord gave me mercy.
I know that's right. I know that's right.
So I went to Detroit College of Law, and that's my history in terms of school.
All right. So you met your wife at Michigan State?
Well, actually, she attended Michigan State, but we didn't meet there.
Okay.
We actually met at church. I was a member of Greater Grace Temple, and I met her there, and we got married at that church.
Okay. And how long you been married?
In November.
You better get this right, because she probably watching. Okay.
In November, it'll be 40.
Wow.
40 wonderful years.
Isn't that nice? Okay.
Thank you.
And is your wife a native Detroiter?
Yes, she was born in Detroit.
Okay.
But raised most of her life in Highland Park, which she calls a suburb of Detroit.
Yeah, all right.
It's really an inburb of Detroit.
Yeah.
But she went to Highland Park, and but.
What's her name? Because I know my viewers. I got viewers in Highland Park. They probably say, "Oh, right. I know her."
She's the former Victoria Peoples, or Vicky Peoples, and now she's Victoria Johnson.
And for the last 40 years.
For the last 40 years.
Isn't that nice?
Yes.
Isn't that
yes,
nice?
I'm thankful. We have 2 children.
Okay.
I have 2 daughters, Monique Winans. She married Marvin Winans, and Candace Kempson. Now she married Justin Kempson.
Okay.
So, and I have
I
3.
know both those family names.
Right.
I know both of those family
And I have
names.
3 grandchildren, 3 lovely grandchildren. They are in California.
Okay.
Yeah, so we don't see them as much as we'd like to, but we do see them from time to time.
What was the first area of law that you started with?
Well, when I graduated from law school, I was working for the state of Michigan as a disability hearings officer.
Okay, now we're gonna talk about that because I'm a member of the disabilities community, so that's you got my ears.
Right.
I didn't know Michigan had it. What the disabilities office doing hearing what?
Well, see, when I was hired with the state of Michigan, I was hired as a disability examiner, and then I was promoted to a disability hearings officer. So while I was going to law school, I was working.
But who's going to these disability hearings? Who's having disability hearings?
Well, this would be people who were receiving disability benefits through the Department of Social Security, and then if their disability benefits were cut off, then they could file for a hearing, and I would be the hearing officer that they would come in front of. So these were people who had been receiving disability benefits, but then they were terminated, and so whether they would continue to be terminated or whether they would be reinstated, I would make that decision.
I guess the reason why I was wondering is because I didn't know that was something that the state of Michigan handled. I guess I thought that was always a federal issue.
Right. It was the state of Michigan was handling the federal program. That's how that worked. Yeah.
All right.
So I was doing that while I was in law school, and then after I graduated from law school, I ended up staying with the state of Michigan, but I went to the Attorney General's office. Okay. So I was hired by Frank Kelly, who was the Attorney General at that time.
See there?
So it goes back a little bit.
Back. Yeah.
This was before Jennifer Granholm.
Yeah.
And so I worked for the Attorney General's office for about 8 years.
And what type of cases did you handle there?
Well, I started off with the unemployment compensation Department.
I used to work for them.
Right. Right. And that was an interesting job because I was assigned to the western part of Michigan. So I was going to Grand Rapids and Muskegon and Wyoming doing hearings and administrative hearings and
Yeah.
circuit court and court of appeals and so forth. And then I stayed there for about 3 years. And then I transferred to the juvenile division, juvenile department. So I represented the Department of Human Services at that time.
All right.
And so we were handling cases where there was abuse or neglect charges against parents. So I represented the department doing that. I did that for about 2 years, and then I went to the department.
Was that in Detroit?
That was in Detroit, right there on the the juvenile building on
Off of 75
yeah,
Freeway,
right,
Chrysler
in the
Freeway.
forest,
Yeah.
yeah. That's where I was working there, and then I went to the Department of Civil Rights,
Ah.
and so there I
State Department of Civil
State
Rights.
Departments, right, I
What were you
represented
doing
them.
there?
Handling civil rights cases. You know,
Okay.
whether it was racial discrimination, it could be gender discrimination, and those type of cases. So I handled those for the Department of Civil Rights.
Would that be administrative hearings and court hearings?
It could be. It depended. You were doing like it could be a lawsuit. You may be suing Pepsi Cola. I think we had one action where we were suing Pepsi Cola for racial discrimination against a young man, and other large companies. So it would involve it's like a civil action. So you
You have a lot of litigation experience.
Right, right. Yeah, I have a litigation experience because I've also handled a lot of criminal cases too. Because once I left the Attorney General's office, I went into private practice, and in private practice, I've been doing, primarily criminal work, but I've also done probate work. I've done civil work, Social Security, disability, and some family law as well. So
All right, let's talk about that Social Security disability. All right.
Okay.
People tell me that everybody gets denied the first when they put in.
Yeah.
You know, that it's kind of like the strategy. If we don't pay, maybe they'll die. Then we don't have to pay.
Well, there's some truth to that in that when people initially apply, and that's what I did as a disability examiner, you're looking at basically a paper review, and then there may be you'll have a consultation review with a doctor, and then the disability examiners, they don't have a lot of discretion as a hearings officer or an administrative law judge does. So oftentimes, just based on the numbers and the law, the disability examiner is usually going to find the person not qualified for disability benefits unless they are really seriously disabled. But as an administrative law judge will have more discretion and have the ability to use that discretion and find a person disabled based on they don't necessarily have to follow the standards as strictly as a disability examiner does, and that's the initial determination.
So most people, if they apply and they're denied, they should at least appeal one time. Would that be sound?
Definitely, I would appeal till it happens. Especially if you know that you're disabled and you can't work.
Okay.
They should definitely appeal and keep doing it until they get the right answer.
And does it? I know sometimes because I have the veterans court, and so we find that sometimes if the person doesn't use the right words, when they're filling in the blanks or trying to put in the answer, one of the big ones that I've come to understand is people will put in Agent Orange. This was folks through the Vietnam era, and for purposes of disability, they didn't even recognize the word Agent Orange. And so there was other terminology
Right.
that needed to be used. And if the people didn't have the right terminology,
Yeah.
they could be disqualified, even though they technically were entitled to benefits.
That's correct. And that's why it is important to get a lawyer involved, and I think as early as possible, because a lot of things you say may seem harmless to you, but it's also used against you and to find you disabled. So, there may be things that you say that, it may be true, but it will cause you to not be found not disabled. And so it's important to have a lawyer involved when you're applying for disability
And somebody
benefits.
that's done that before.
Right, someone who is experienced in
That's
that area.
familiar with
right.
it.
Familiar with the law, familiar with the vocational factors, because they take vocational factors into consideration. They take your history, your age, and your educational level. Those factors are taken in too, so they can make a difference.
So are you still at this time handling those types of cases?
No, I've narrowed my practice down. I really
So
don't.
you just disappointed a whole lot of folks. Okay, the farmer's getting ready to jump off the hook.
But I do know people that do it, and I can refer. I can make referrals
Okay.
to people who will very competently handle your disability claim.
Okay.
I've kind of limited my practice now to criminal and probate. That's primarily the areas of law that I'm handling.
Now, I hear things because, I'm out and about in the community and people will talk to me. We, as a community, lose a lot of property. We lose Big Mama's house because we don't prepare for the inevitable. And so a lot of times the Big Mama's house will be there and somebody, one of the children or grandchildren will be living there, may or may not pay the taxes. And are there some things that as a community you see that we don't take care of business, that folks ought to be doing in order to try to protect what assets they do have?
Well, definitely, and especially when people die, you want to make sure things are in order. In terms of property, making sure that it passes the way you want it to pass. That can be done through a will. It also can be done through doing your deeds and doing putting people on your deed in a way that will make the property pass to them and avoid probate in some cases. And also you may want to set up a trust. There are things you can do to make sure that property passes the way you want it to pass. So those are things that you should do in a preventive manner to make sure things are done so you don't have chaos when someone dies.
Yeah.
So that's very important, and it's important in the black community that we do those things.
Because we're losing, what we do have it oftentimes because we don't want to take care of business for the inevitable.
Right. We're not going to live here forever.
Not at all. We're definitely not.
And just talking about death or preparing for it doesn't mean death is right around the corner. So we shouldn't be afraid of that. We should do the things necessary. So when
and so many of our community, so many members of our community confess faith, and with that, they should not have fear.
Right.
They should not have fear.
Absolutely. If you're a person, a strong believer in the Lord, if you're a Christian, then when you leave here, it's a good thing for you. So you shouldn't be afraid of death, but you should prepare for it.
And also you kind of want to look after, to the extent that you can, those who are going to be left here. And so you work hard for these things.
Right. And also, this is not necessarily probate, but also get life insurance. When people pass, it's bad enough that they're missing that person, but you don't want to make it a financial hardship upon them. And oftentimes you can create wealth. That's one of the major ways people create wealth is through life insurance. So I'm not a life insurance agent. I was at one time.
So you know a little bit about that too.
I know a little bit about that, and it's worthwhile to have a nice piece of nice insurance for the people that you love. Yeah. And one thing about it, someone dies, you're sad about that, but you get a big check afterwards. It kind of helps bring a little relief
you're able to handle expenses that are associated.
Right.
It helps with those expenses too.
Right. Take a vacation or something. You want to
relieve that grief.
Right. So definitely you want to have life insurance. That's
pay off some of the bills because you might be Big Mama's house, but Big Mama may have left a second mortgage.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. So yeah, that's a good thing. My guest today is attorney Dwayne Johnson. And he's been an attorney how many years now?
This will be my 30th year.
Okay. All right. Year. Now, like I said, people tell me things. I hear that you've been out passing out some kind of petition. Yeah. What you petitioning for or about?
Well, I'm getting signatures right now to get on the ballot for the 36th District Court.
Really?
Yes, I'm a Christian. I believe in the Bible, and I try to follow it. And there's a scripture in Proverbs 3:5 that says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. And in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path."
That's the deacon, right?
That's the deacon.
'Cause you're a
speaking.
deacon,
I'm a
too.
deacon at Straight Gate International Church, and in seeking God's direction for my life, at this time He's leading me to run for 36th District Court as a judge, and I think I can have an impact on the court and on the people that come before me, and that's why I'm doing that.
Now, couple things. You got 30 how many years legal experience?
30 years.
And you in private practice.
I am.
We don't often get people with that many years of experience running for judge.
Yes, it's something that I feel inspired to do, and I'm really committed to our city and just helping Detroit, rise up. And I think and looking at you, Judge Thomas, you've been an excellent example in the city as a judge and for this community in terms of how you reach out afterwards and what you do, the extracurricular activities that you're involved in to help promote the city of Detroit. And as a mentor and as an example, that's the same type of thing I want to do as a judge. It's not just being on the court during the day, but when you're not on the court, using that influence as a judge to promote this city and to help people in this city to become what they need to be and what they want to be.
Now, I was looking at some information because, I want to know a little bit about you before I bring you on here. I
Okay.
mean, just having you practice in front of me and, in court, that don't mean I get to know you that well. Your parents were both employed in human services.
That's correct. They're both public servants.
Yeah.
My mother is a school teacher in the Detroit Public Schools. She retired from Chatsey High School.
What's your mom's name? It's probably some folks out here going to say,
Pearl Johnson is my mother's name.
All right,
Pearl-
and what did she teach?
She taught home economics.
Okay,
At Chatsey High School. And then my father was a Detroit police officer for 38 years.
Okay.
He was very involved in the community. He was one of the founders and president of the Guardians, which was a black organization in the police department, which helped.
What's
try to
his name?
change- Mackie Johnson.
Okay.
Mackie Johnson. That was my father. He passed a few years back. But he was very involved and set a good example of that, of public service in the community. He was also the president of the Fitzgerald Community Council as well. So I got a chance to see public service and giving back to the community firsthand, and I know the importance of doing that. I've been blessed. God's been good to me, and He blesses you so you can be a blessing.
Well.
And that's what I want to do for the city of Detroit and for the 36th District Court.
Now, they say to those to whom much is given,
That's right. Much is required.
much is required.
Much is required,
Much is
so.
required. I wanted, that question came through, and then it went right back out. Now, I don't know how you're going to respond to this one.
Okay.
I'm just going to ask you the things that people ask me about,
Okay.
because otherwise, if they don't have an opportunity. So I'm going to ask their questions.
Okay.
36th District Court does a lot of landlord-tenant cases.
That's correct.
I've had a number of landlords who have said to me that they feel that the court is biased against landlords because there are more tenants than there are landlords.
Okay.
So it's kind of like if we go with the tenants, we got more votes. And yet every landlord in the city of Detroit is not a slumlord.
Correct.
But by the same token, because property values being what they are, it's not a real big money maker in Detroit. Where you may be able to get $600 in Detroit if the same house was located in another city, they might be able to get twice as much for rent.
That's right.
But when it comes time to do the repairs, you're not getting a 50% discount
Right.
on the supplies and the labor because you're in Detroit. Are you familiar with this dynamic? Any opinions on that or thoughts or?
Yeah, I am. I'm familiar with it. I myself have been a landlord
Okay.
in the city of Detroit in the past. So I know that side of it, and I've also been a tenant. So I've been on both sides of the equation. But the important thing, I think, for a judge is to be fair. And that fairness should go regardless of whether it's a tenant or a landlord. You want to follow the law and you want to be fair. And I mean, there's time for compassion as well. But you know, the landlord, if they're doing what they're supposed to do, they're performing a service for the people of the city of Detroit, and so they shouldn't be looked at as bad people because they're landlords. They're giving a place, especially if you're not a slum landlord.
Yeah.
And someone who is a slum landlord, that should be dealt with in the court as well. But I'm going to be fair with landlords as well as tenants, and I'm going to be just in my decisions, and I think that's how that should be handled, based on the facts and based on the law and the circumstances.
Now, that's a busy court. All right. I hadn't been over there in years because I quit practicing. You know, I was on the bench, and then I got called as a witness. And I was amazed at the number of people just constantly moving in and out of that building. Are you over at 36 often these days?
I'm over there. I'm over there for different cases. A lot of times it's, you know, I deal with some traffic matters from time to time and some misdemeanors. And then I'm over there when I'm handling felonies where we have to do the preliminary exam and so forth, probable cause conference. So I am over at 36th District Court. I won't say a whole lot, but I'm over there enough.
Yeah. It's different. All right.
Yeah.
If you have a question, feel free to call in.
Okay.
My guest today is Attorney Dwayne Johnson. He is a lifetime resident of the city of Detroit. A very interesting background in terms of the expansiveness of the practice that you've had in the places that you've worked and that type of skill. So I had no idea. I had no idea. Tell us in terms of any community service or projects or that you have been working on recently, say within the last 5 to 10 years. I know being an attorney in court all day and you got to go to the office, and then when you get to the office, you got to see clients, and after you see the clients, you got to do the paperwork, and then you got to get your thoughts together. So when you get back the next day, you got to get back to the court. People don't always understand that it's almost a 16-hour-a-day job.
Yes.
6 days a week.
Yeah. Yeah, being an attorney, it can be a very busy lifestyle for you. But I still think, you know, you have to do other things as well and things to help other people. We're not here just for ourselves. You know, so I'm involved with I minister at the juvenile detention facility. I go there and I talk to and relate to and minister to young men who are at the juvenile detention facility and try to make a change and make a difference in their lives.
Is there receptiveness? You know, people have their stereotypes about young men down at the juvenile detention center. I mean, maybe because they're there, they're looking for God, okay, and all the help that they can get. But oftentimes people just assume that these were bad boys, and and I didn't know they had a program of that nature at the detention center.
Yeah. We, in fact, from our church, we go over there 4th and 5th Sundays. Okay. And it's just a group of us that go over there to the juvenile detention facility, and they are very welcoming to us, and we have young ladies that go and talk to the ladies, and and men who talk to the young men, and it's really rewarding just talking to them and getting to know them and communicating with them, letting them know that God loves them. That's one of the main things that I think is missing out of a lot of these young people's lives is knowing having a life that's centered on God and a relationship with the Lord and the Bible, and knowing who they are. So we have opportunity to really minister to them and see changes in
and
their
they're not
lives.
forced to come to this program.
No, not at all. They're asked who wants to come, and there's always young men that come. They want to hear. They have a hunger for us to communicate with them and just talk to them. And we talk to them about life and how things that they can do that will change their life and change the direction of their lives. And it's very rewarding going there and just seeing the responses that we get. And when you come back, and they're so glad to see you there. So it's really, makes a difference, you know. So that's one of the
Yeah.
things I'm involved in. Also involved as a board member for Black United Fund of Michigan, also known as Buff of Michigan, and that's an organization that's very involved in the community with mentorships programs, Buff 45 scholarships, and different type of. We got a Aero program for to get young African Americans into the space, not space, but flying planes and that type of thing. That's
Wow.
involved with the Tuskegee Airmen are involved with that, and you know we just have a lot of programs through Buff that helps the young people in our community. So I'm also involved with that, and I'm also a deacon at my church, and so we do some things through the church and also in the community there. I've been at Straight Gate Church over 25 years, and I've been a deacon over 20 years there, and so I try to serve in that capacity as well. I believe in public service. I
Yeah.
believe in, as I said before, giving back, and these are some of the vehicles that I'm able to use to give back to others in our community.
Well, you know, the clock has ticked away faster than anyone could have ever imagined.
Okay.
Dwayne, I want to thank you for coming in.
Well, thank you, Judge. It's always
Yeah.
a blessing talking to you.
Yeah. And I also want to thank you for staying in Detroit.
Definitely,
All right.
definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
I was gone for a little bit, but I'm back, and I'm back for good.
Yeah, I want to let you know that how much I appreciate that as well. I think that it's important that we don't just talk to talk, but that we walk to walk. My guest today has been attorney Dwayne Johnson. I'm really interested in this program that you're providing these services at the Juvenile Detention Center. I had no idea. I know that they
Right.
had a ministry for the adults,
Okay.
but I didn't know we were working to help the babies as well.
Definitely. If we can get them early, we can change the direction, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so glad that you tuned in today. I hope that you have enjoyed getting to an opportunity to meet Attorney Dwayne Johnson, and I'm sure you'll be hearing more from him. And I'm going to, as always, say to you that I love you, Detroit. And I will see you next week, same place, same time. Thank you.
Thank you.